All right, we are live. We're here. We made it. We have a new guest this round, Sean, potentially criminal. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
All right. Can you give us a brief bio?
Sure. So my name's Sean Martin. I run the channel Potentially Criminal. You guys can find me here on YouTube there under Potentially Criminal. Find me on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, same place as well. I am a defense attorney. I work out of the Cleveland area here in Ohio, and I try to cover a lot of criminal topics, but just any other legal topic that kind of catches my eye that I think is pretty interesting. Do a weekly show every Thursday, 9:30. Try to cover what's been going on. So if you guys are keeping track, today's Friday, so you just missed it. And next Thursday, we'll do it again. And then you can also find me over on Locals at potentiallycriminal.locals.com.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And everyone, I did put a link to his channel in the chat. There's a link to everybody's channel in the chat. You should just be able to click the name and go right there to any channel, subscribe, and, definitely show some support. It really helps a lot. And even though I know everybody can't watch every video, you never know what comes down. You get a notification. It's like, oh, I want to hear about Koberger or something. And boom, somebody's talking about it. But let me see. To open with, I think I was talking offline. Somebody wrote and requested that I talk about a subject on here that I'm clueless about. So I will happily hand it over to Steve because I asked him ahead. The whole Live PGA Tour merger, I guess, is very controversial. I don't golf. I don't follow it. I have no idea. So, Steve, fill us in. What's up?
Well, I did used to golf a lot when I was in law school, but that faded over time. However, I have looked at this situation. It's interesting from a few viewpoints, and we watched the series. I think it was on Netflix or whatever about golf, which was really well done. All right, so here's the story on it. PGA, that's the longstanding professional golf organization that runs a tournament and pretty much the game, right? Lots of prizes and stuff. Now, that's separate from the majors that you hear about, like the Masters, U.S. Open, British Open. Live Golf came up in 2021. Greg Norman was the face of it, and it was backed by billions of Saudi dollars, right? Lots of money. Now, the name Live is supposedly for the Roman numeral 54, and that's how many holes their events would have. And they weren't trying to be just another PGA. They had other changes to a normal tour format. They'd have music, a different dress code, and they weren't cutting players. So it's kind of like a Happy Gilmore, Saudi Arabia mashup there. And they paid enormous bonuses to famous players, famous PGA players, to play in their events. And they got a lot of names like Phil Mickelson and other people. So PGA decided not to live and let live with Live Golf, but it told its players, if you play for Live Golf, you're not playing in the PGA. And then that litigation ensues from that, and a nasty split between players because some went and some didn't. Tiger Woods turned down a reported $1 billion to go to Live Golf. And Roy McIlroy turned down a rumored $400 million to go play golf with Live Golf. Others took big paydays, and some of them are big names, and some of them guys were kind of washed up in PGA, but they still got paid big. Now, golf media took sides. Live was an attempt by the Saudi government to cloud their past human rights records. And they were always hectoring Live players, saying, how dare you, like a gallery of Greta Thunbergs challenging them. How dare you play for this oil money? So, waiting into this last year, Trump, who's always, a calming figure in social media, posted that any player not taking these giant paydays and staying loyal to PGA was losing out because PGA would not reciprocate. And instead, a merger would come at some point and the paydays would stop, and all you'd end up with was a thanks. So, well, here we are, and thanks. A shell company is being created called Newco, and it's going to own PGA commercial and TV rights, all the big money, and that of Live Golf. PGA will still remain as a nonprofit. And who's getting the controlling end of it? The Saudis get the head of the board of directors, okay? and the PGA people will get more seats on the board. But the Saudis, who been condemned by all the gnashing of teeth media and stuff here, they're going to be the head of the board. It's not official yet, but because PGA has a policy board that has to approve it. But the money washing around on the back of this, it's happening. Lots of players don't want it because they were all gaslit into PGA will stand with you. We'll weather this storm. Nobody wants to try and be part of this thrashing of and trashing of past human rights abuses and whitewashing over that. So now, what about all the players that turn down the big bucks? Are they going to get something more than thanks that Trump said they get? Well, the current PGA head said anybody who takes live money will not play PGA while I'm in charge. But now he says we'll have a serious conversation about doing something for these players.
He's going to clarify.
Yeah, I think he got an attitude adjustment in the form of some kind of check. So, and the media is going to get that too. I mean, they made the Saudis sound like from their soapboxes that this merger was so horrible from a morality standpoint that now watching it reverse, it's like seeing Greta Thunberg show up to Charlotte Motor Speedway in an Escalade with a shirt saying there's no replacement for displacement, and announce she's the spokesman for motorsports that she's always loved. And if there's one thing you can count on for media and its principles is they don't have any. Golf media that scolded anything connected to the Saudis as unclean, they're going to drop all that now that the PGA is playing ball with Live Golf because media is by and large garbage. That's
but I mean, do you fault them? I mean, like, what did Greg Norman take? Greg Norman signed with him and took how much?
The shock.
I mean, a lot.
A lot of money. Huge money.
Yeah, I mean, but is it just the Saudis? It's just FU money to the Saudis. I mean, we have I don't care about soccer, but we have soccer player, football player Messi, who took like about $650 million to play 1 year in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
I literally can't think of a single thing I would do, including probably killing another human being for $650 million. Do you fault them for taking the money?
No.
At what point does money overcome principles, or principles just, it's a game.
It's a game. And for the guys like Rory, who did stay with PGA and spoke up for them, and behind the scenes, PGA was negotiating this merger, like Trump said. So, and that the PGA, who said we can't deal with this whole money, we're the pure golf organization, they sold that anyway. So yeah, they got. Even if they hadn't, I couldn't fault any of the guys who were taking the money for this. This is generational wealth these people are getting for their families.
No, it seems very reminiscent of, I don't know, I mean, it might be predating or whatnot, and might be something that most people watching don't really care about, but it seems very reminiscent of what happened with Kerry Packer in the World Series cricket back in '77. I mean, bringing in the against the world stars and that sort of thing, and individuals not being allowed to play in the regular cricket series while taking significant pay packets. It's very, very reminiscent of that to me, really, is sort of the parallels I'm drawing. Is that you really can't blame people for wanting to play the game that they love while receiving a significant pay packet, even if it's going to potentially have the ramifications of having them excluded from other areas, because money makes the world go round. We know this. So,
and what about the fans too? I mean, don't they count in the whole equation in the sense that if the players are playing one place, they're not allowed to play somewhere else, and you're really just abusing the fans? Or am I misinterpreting?
Well, as I gathered it, that was, the PGA's decision, right? So that wasn't the Saudis saying, if you come play for us, you can't do anything else. That's the stance the PGA took because of the hemorrhaging they were having, and they didn't want this competition. Now there could be more to it than that, but that's the narrative as I've got it.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and I kind of understand the PGA to a degree of, you've got billions of dollars hanging out there. You can just kiss it all away, unless you have something you can hold on to, they'll all just leave. Then you'll have no PGA players. Everybody will be playing for the other thing. So I don't know how you survive that kind of thing. But speaking of the calming influence that you were discussing, who wants to open with document yard sales?
Oh God.
Jeff.
No. Joseph has some words to say.
I know Joe did a stream on this, I think.
The Trump indictment.
Oh, that's
Did that happen?
you guys heard about that?
Rumored.
Yeah, I heard something. Saw some news articles, but yeah.
Vaguely familiar.
Look, it's a federal indictment. It seems like it's definitely coming. Tuesday, 3:00 down in Miami. I think it's probably a bigger deal than the New York indictment, but likely not going to be anything. That's my synopsis. If you want me to go into detail, I can, and sound more lawyerly than just like some internet troll.
Oh, I expected like a long rant from you, Joe. I'm really surprised.
He's gone all full Samson.
Maybe I'm
Samson. He's trimmed the stash and the beard a little bit, so he's lost his powers.
Are you all talked out? You already did a stream on this, so you know
he's lost his powers. He's gone full Samson on
my stream got nuked. My stream got nuked, but this one
of
really
course it did.
No, not because.
Let's see if we can nuke Eric's stream.
No, this was my own. This one was my own fault. This was copyright infringement, which I was really pushing the borders on it near the end of my stream. So I'm going to see if I can get it rectified and just remove what I was sharing for like the last 30 minutes of my thing. But yeah, so you're not going to find it unless you check on Rumble, which it's still up there. But basically, okay. You want to know my feelings about it? You want a lawyer perspective, a political perspective? There's all sorts of different perspectives. I don't know.
I want the interesting perspective.
Okay, fine.
We just want a Joe rant. That's all we want.
You want the show to be interesting. You should have told me beforehand. I would have. Okay, yeah. Long story short, here's why I don't think it's going to be a big deal at all. Number one, it doesn't make any sense to me why it is that he should be that. I don't. From a legal theoretical perspective, and it sounds stupid to talk about legal theoreticals, but when you're talking about a president of the United States being indicted for taking documents that he had access to for 4 years and had complete authority over as the commander-in-chief, as the executive-in-chief, had the complete authority to declassify him, for him to be charged under the Espionage Act for taking documents that are classified sounds, from a legal theoretical perspective, to be bizarre, because when you talk about what's the whole argument? I mean, this is I was on Spaces talking about this and arguing with a bunch of leftists about this, because this is what happens is they'll talk, and you need to follow me on Locals. Seriously, this I'm not joking about. You really need to follow me on Locals, because I jump into these spaces and I'm arguing with leftists, and there's no way for me to tell anyone that I'm doing it unless if you want to watch me fight in front of 10,000 people with a bunch of other lawyers. The only way to do that is you follow me on goodlogic.locals.com. But I'll tell you, this is the legal, there's a few legal arguments here. So number one, what happens is Trump gets up there and says, go indict Obama, go arrest Bush, go arrest Clinton, go arrest all of them. What's he really saying? What he's really saying is, we've all done this. We've all done this. Is that a legal argument? Sort of, a little bit. It's not really a legal argument, but he's a layperson. You don't expect him to be providing a legal argument. What he's really basically what it really boils down to is this: the Constitution and no statute really gives any directive as to what steps the president must take to declassify. We know that he had complete authority, both under what traditional established law in America, plus an EO that Obama signed, which gave wider carte blanche expressly to certain parties for declassification. That he had the authority to declassify, and we also know that whatever steps had traditionally been taken by various presidents to declassify were never considered mandatory by anyone. So now the question becomes, okay, from a legal perspective, how does he have to declassify? What steps does he have to take to declassify it? Some on the left want to claim, and I'm sure that the Smith special prosecutor, he's going to want to claim that there's an established pattern as to what the president's supposed to do in order to declassify documents, and others from a legal theoretical perspective, because this has never been litigated, and it's never been litigated. There's never been a finding by the court, and there's never been finding by the court. We're all in the theoretical world. That's why this is one of those rare instances that I think the theoretical makes more sense to approach than as far as what makes sense under legal theory. Since there is no established pattern, you want to hold him guilty of a crime. This is not civil penalty. It really should be a civil thing, if anything. But since you want to establish up to a level of crime, you have to give the benefit of the doubts to the defendant under the rule of lenity, which is that we're going to try and establish, unless there's an express law making something illegal, it's not illegal. So you have to, under the law, give the benefit of the doubt on any readings of laws. And there's very limited law that's actually prescribed as to what he must fulfill here. So you can't just say, well, because custom is this way, now we're going to interpret the law that he has to that he had to follow that. That sounds to me to be really ridiculous. I've heard some MAGA lawyers say that as soon as it floats through his brain that it's declassified, that alone is declassification. To me, that makes no sense. The most logical thing from a philosophical perspective is that if the president takes a classified document, this could be something classified like, you know, what happened to Marilyn Monroe, or what's going on with those 10 alien ships or whatever. It could be classified nukes. It could be some classified as to how to make a stapler in the most efficient way possible, because that's the sort of thing they classify also. Whatever it is that's classified, I believe that since he has the authority to do it, there's such a thing called a verbal act, which means that when you take certain actions, it has an express implied statement behind it. For example, if someone says anyone who was wearing a blue shirt last Saturday, take 2 steps forward, and you take 2 steps forward, that's an implication. It's a verbal statement that you're making, that I wore a blue shirt last Saturday. That's essentially what you're doing. The action, you didn't say words, but the action itself serves to speak. And I think that it's pretty clear, it's pretty logical that if the president of the United States, who has complete authority to actually declassify anything he wants, takes documents from a secure location and moves them to a non-secure location.
He had a skiff. They were in a skiff, if I recall.
They were not.
Joe, we've only got like an hour and a half left. Wrap it up.
You asked me to be interesting. This is what I do on my show.
There's a Mar-a-Lago
skiff. What do you want me to do? Yeah, but it's not a legally classified skiff or whatever. So,
it was when he was president.
Yes, it was when they arrived there. I think it became declassified after, but it was, let's just say it was a little more secure than somebody's garage.
Okay. Well, yes. that chalks up to a different defense. My point is, to the extent that he's taking it to a place and planning and putting it in a place that's not going to be classified, that is an action. That's a verbal act of him saying, I'm declassifying it. The same way if he took those classified documents, walked into Central Park and left them on a bench, that is an act of declassification in my mind, because he's basically saying these are not classified. Why is it different if he leaves them on a park bench in Central Park rather than doing it leaving it in Mar-a-Lago? So my point is, I don't think it's possible for the president to violate the Espionage Act by failing to properly secure documents, because the verbal act should be paramount. So that's with respect to the espionage charge. Against the obstruction charges and the conspiracy charges also, but that's why, from a philosophical perspective. Now, he also is very blessed that this case is not in Washington, D.C., because if it was in Washington, D.C., then in that case, he's going to have a lineup of judges and jury members who basically are thinking he's been charged, he must be guilty, and they're going to convict him. Is there any jurisdiction in the country which is more favorable toward MAGA and Trump specifically than Florida? No. So from that perspective, this is actually a very positive thing that Smith felt compelled to bring this in Florida, because I think he felt that if he had any chance of getting conviction in short order in Washington, I think that if he felt that it would have been viable to get this done in Washington, I think he certainly would have preferred Washington. But the Washington claim
could it be? I'm curious before you move off that, Joe.
Yeah, you guys, you guys can interject anytime. I've been rambling for a
while. No, I'm saying, could that be strategy too? Like, let's say it's a weak case or it's not a legit case. By bringing it to an area that's a Trump stronghold, so to speak, and he loses, he could say, yeah, it was rigged. I lost because it's in a bad area. And meanwhile, Trump is still having to deal with this. I mean, it does feel convenient to opposition of Trump, be it on the right or the left, to keep him busy in court. I'm sure that DeSantis is just really crying right now, hearing that, oh my, Donald Trump's going to be busy fighting court cases, and every time I go on the road, I could talk about Trump being in trouble. So,
Megyn Kelly said about DeSantis last week. She said the problem with DeSantis' personality is that he has none, and I'm thinking to myself, he's the first person who should have spoken out against this thing. He is the first. I was searching for what his position was on this whole thing. He is the first person who should have come out barking about how terrible this is. With all this talk about how he's a rhino is a rhino in MAGA clothing or whatever it is, all these different, or a corporate shill or something like that. The worst thing that he could have possibly done was to sit here. I don't know if he said anything this morning. I haven't checked any of the news this morning, but as when I went to bed last night, he had not weighed in on this at all. I think that was a terrible mistake. So, and I think you might be correct that politically it's advantageous to them to try and time up this way. I don't know how much time he's personally going to spend on this rather than just assigning his legal team to handle this for him.
But it keeps it in the news. So it's like every other headline is indicted. Bad thing in New York that I can't say on YouTube because of the 4-letter R word. On and on and on. It's just like a constant marching of a narrative.
And just like with the New York case, there might be a gag order put out. So imagine that screwing with things that you won't be able to talk about it.
I think it's a based judge, though, isn't it, Joe? Aren't the leftists upset that the judge assigned to this case is the one who'd said, "Hey, I don't necessarily believe DOJ all the time," so they're mad about that they didn't get a DC style judge.
I haven't looked into the judge yet. I haven't checked that out. So if you can share on that, that'd be great. Steve.
Well, I just had seen something shortly before we came on the stream that people were butthurt about the judge, that she was one, I think, involved earlier. Maybe she got reversed or something when she was the special master. She was the one who installed the special master.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the Court of Appeal said, no, you can't do that. So they're complaining about that she's not 100% in the tank for putting all political opponents in jail like the DC judges are. And on DeSantis, isn't there a sheriff in Texas, and in addition to California, saying, oh, we need to have DeSantis charged criminally for kidnapping immigrants and sending them to sanctuary areas and things like that? This whole concept
for
of
the Martha's Vineyard thing? For Martha's Vineyard?
That, and I think a flight to California too, and so I know there was a leftist sheriff in Texas saying that they've completed their criminal investigation, and so this idea of let's take our political opponents and put them in jail as a solution now to everything. I'm not a giant Trump fan, but I really don't like it.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting point. So I was watching Fox this morning, and I saw this bit where they brought on former, I believe it was the assistant director of the FBI, Christopher Swecker, and he was talking about prosecutorial discretion. And just basically driving that point home, and this might be very obvious, but the whole concept that, we prosecute when it's in the best interest of the public, correct? And so there is no point to this prosecution at this point in time. It doesn't really do anything for the public. It's very obvious and overt. And I believe that Trump Jr. was talking about how Biden yesterday, there was something that came up about like a $2 million, amount of money that was, funneled to him through some kind of foreign entity. And so essentially he was saying that, there might be violations, but that it's not in the best interest of the public to go forward with this. Obviously, it seems like a political prosecution. That's a very obvious thing to say, but
the public is the most dangerous thing out there.
That's my talking point.
You guys think that an independent or a centrist is going to be anti-Trump because they keep talking about him being federally indicted rather than becoming pro-Trump and feeling similar outrage to Steve that this is not what America is supposed to be about?
It's turning everybody who was kind of like moving away from Trump into, they're defending him. I feel like this is going to bolster his numbers.
Yeah, I think so too.
And on DeSantis,
make a martyr of him.
I feel like DeSantis would do really well to support him because it would make him look, like he isn't making moves. I mean, he's running, correct? And so if he's quiet about Trump, it's going to make it look like everything is in his interest.
He's running. Trump. He's running. Christie's running. Pence is running. Tim Scott's running. It's looking like 20. What are we up to? 20 candidates.
I want Santos to run. Because
If
he
you
can
defend
get the
Trump.
Jewish votes.
Oh God!
I want
Oh,
Santos
yeah.
to run.
Does
would be-
anybody know
DeSantis.
That would be
Chandler?
fantastic.
Sadly, there are a lot more Jews who are Jewish than Jewish.
Right. Well, there's a lot. Everybody
Guilty,
falls
me.
into that category.
Yeah.
Chandler, you were
Yes.
watching this morning, so do you know about this Walt Nauta or the
I'm not familiar.
indicted in tapes? Okay, well, that was just from the chat, so I wanted to jump in on that.
I missed that.
Okay, I guess there's more news that we haven't caught up with, folks. So I don't know.
There must be.
Yeah, no, there's things
Nope.
coming in from like 15, 20 minutes ago about it, so it's probably not.
News is
well.
always
There are updates all the time.
Is it okay in Florida for people just to tape Trump saying things without some kind of warrant or something? Is that a one-party consent state like North Carolina is? I could tape somebody talking if I wanted to, but a lot of states are not like that.
I think Florida's a 3-party consent state, but I'm not sure.
I thought it had
Three-party.
I thought it had multiple party consent. Like
Yeah.
California is kind of like that, where
We're
if you're in a
two-party consent.
conversation, you
Yeah.
need to consent. So I thought that's how
Exactly.
they were, but I'm sure if it's bad against Trump, then no laws apply.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
If you
sure
pull up
that Florida
super
is a
chat that
multiple.
just came in, by the way,
Yeah, I'll be pulling that up just now.
because I actually
right.
I have thoughts about his declassification,
Of course you do.
which I haven't really made public.
I want to know more about what the leftists
Yeah.
were saying, Joe, and what you were fighting with them about, because I would have loved to have heard that. Spaces.
It wasn't the leftist. It was a leftist.
Oh, you were
Oh,
there.
just one. You were there.
Yeah.
You observed. What did the leftists have to say? The
I mean, she
leftist,
wasn't.
singular.
To be frank, she really wasn't talking crazy. It was a woman named Tira who she wasn't really talking crazy,
Oh,
but she was.
I beg to differ. You were stroking out.
No, but that's just Joe.
Stroking out, Joe.
Yeah, he didn't say he wasn't talking.
That's why he has to vape on camera. It's Joe. Okay.
He had like the vein pulsing. There was an aneurysm in the process. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I mean, she was saying that this is more of a serious deal, and I think she was fair in some degree in pointing out that there's a lot of facts that we don't know yet. You talk about that declassification. So supposedly he actually wrote a letter saying, "I'm hereby declassifying all the documents related to Crossfire Hurricane," and I think there was something else that he incorporated in there also, and which is, I guess, in a certain way positive. In a certain way, I mean, the way the left is going to try and spin it, and the way she was trying to spin it, which is not an unreasonable way to read it. The fact that he felt a need to write that letter. If there's, let's assume that this Crossfire Hurricane is there, but there's other documents also. The fact that he himself felt the need to write that letter implies that anything he's taking that he's not putting in that letter would not be declassified. So in that sense, that letter could end up biting him, it could end up being a shot in his own foot.
Yeah.
Because it's almost a statement that he felt he had to actually do something in writing rather than do something in his own mind. And that could be a concession to the prosecution that it's not simply a matter of relying on a verbal act or talking to your friend and saying, I'm declassifying these documents. So but we don't know factually what documents were there. Maybe it was just Crossfire Hurricane, in which case it would seem like the letter would help. And the question is, and that's the problem, is it's too early for us to really know. Everyone wants to know what's going to happen, but there's too many facts that are unknown to the public at large, myself included, to really say anything definitively.
Okay, but can we all agree that in 2024 it would be very handy if someone would just give him a stamp with the words declassified on it to keep in his breast pocket?
Well, I mean, there is a degree of hypocrisy too. I'm sorry, Pence's documents. Oh, hey,
Sorry.
Hayden hears himself. Anyway, I mean, Pence
You'd love
has
to hear
documents
yourself.
everywhere. Biden has documents in the garage, over here, over there. It's like, I mean, he's spreading them out all over the place. That's why my joke about the yard sale. For
This happens with
classified
every
documents.
president.
I finally got that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
it happened with all of them.
It's an interesting thing because with the left, like whenever he brings up about Biden and Obama and Clinton and Bush, everyone taking these documents, so the left says, yeah, but they didn't stand in the way. They didn't stand in the way when they wanted them back. I don't understand what that means with respect to the Espionage Act, and let me explain why. Because either the moment he's taking it, there's something wrong. In which case, at what moment is the crime happening? The crime, because apparently, according to that logic, that means, yeah, you could take the documents, sure, as long as you're willing to give them back. When does it become a crime? Is it become a crime the moment that they ask them to come back? If you fail to come, that all of a sudden there's a duty, that there's some new law that's unwritten that you're allowed to take documents as long as you give them back when they're asked for? That doesn't seem to make any sense. At what moment is the criminal act? And so either they were breaking the law and we say, okay, you broke the law, but we're going to let you get away with breaking the law because you were nice about it later and we're more. If you believe everything the left is saying, which I don't believe any of it, but even their own logic falls without anyone refuting it, because it doesn't make any sense when you start trying to dissect what they're actually saying, because there has to be an act of criminality that he's doing something wrong. And the act of just refusing it, that wouldn't make it an espionage act. That wouldn't be anything. That's not what makes an espionage. So to the extent that he would be guilty for espionage, and espionage over here is that he's taking classified documents for himself. So I don't understand how refusal to give it back or being agreeable and giving them back would have any impact on that at all. It makes no sense with respect to trying to establish the moment of crime.
Would it help his position if for like his election theme song, he had like Judas Priest breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law? Would that be like a good thing?
Well, it would be great, except Judas Priest would probably refuse it. I mean, every other act always says, no, don't play our music. So
I'd say the Dead Kennedy's version of I Fought the Law, where it goes, I fought the law and I won.
Oh, there you go.
He needs a leather jacket. That's what I think.
All right.
Like a motorcycle jacket with like a hog pin.
It could be a good look. Yeah.
Oh, on the obstructionist thing, there's actually a Supreme Court case, which is Arthur Anderson LLP versus the United States.
Joe wants to talk about serious stuff. Okay.
Sorry, I'm just going to throw this. Look, he assembled a bunch of lawyers and they're talking about an indictment. We should talk a little law, right? So I'm just pointing out there's a case called Arthur Anderson LLP versus United States, which goes back to the Enron days and when they shredded documents, and that was considered they were trying to be obstructionists, and there were documents that the government wanted back, and the Supreme Court in that case, it was from 2005, said that unless you can show there's an intent to do something that's corrupt, you cannot hold him liable. Which, how they would establish that Trump was looking to do something corrupt, unless they can show that he was looking to sell these documents, to the Saudis, the way the left is claiming. So I would think that those charges have a very good chance of being dismissed without it going anywhere. And then the conspiracy, we're all speculating what the charges even are. But this is why I say, is this a little bit more of a tougher case?
Nate, the lawyer, saying no.
Oh,
Nate, what's up, Nate?
Nate's just biting his nails.
We need a leftist in here to create some friction.
Well, Joe's
he's killing it. Congratulations, Nate crossed 300,000.
Yeah,
that's fabulous. Wow, bravo, Nate.
Nate is a rock star.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm looking at 37,000. Come on, people, subscribe to me.
Hey, subscribe to this channel. It's at 20-something thousand.
And him too.
While you're here, if you don't mind, subscribe to everybody here.
Yeah, subscribe to me. I'm at 1.45. If I got 1,500
that's pretty good for having literally one video uploaded. You're pretty.
I don't have one.
We got you.
I have 7 videos uploaded.
We got you over 1,000 a couple weeks ago on
here. You did. That was awesome.
So one thing that's offensive about these freaking, hopefully the algorithm translated that right with a Southern accent. So I don't want to demonetize. Anyway, this confidential or classified information is how much of it, they always act like, oh, it's the nuclear codes. You could launch ICBMs if you had these numbers. But how much of the classified junk is really about keeping Americans uninformed about what's going on? I mean, I know if you look at a lot of military stuff, sometimes it's like, well, it's classified that these people are in this country. The people know that we're over there. The Russians know we're over there. We're just trying to keep our own people from knowing we're over there.
Well, I mean, that was the picture that was just released. What, an hour, two or three hours ago that Sean, potentially criminal, clued me into the Abrams tanks on fire and burned out shells of them in Ukraine.
The Leopard tanks. Yeah.
Also, what about Biden's documents? I mean, it's one or the other. It's like either Biden and Trump have both done wrong with this just declassified stuff, because it's very similar, don't you think? Or neither of them have.
And if we're worried about the spooky espionage, having your son's emails talking about, hey, here's how if you want in, here's how it breaks down, here's how the access is charged. It's like, Okay, and you just left boxes of stuff sitting in your garage. Like, okay,
Hunter's not smart.
yeah. Well, that's why I'm saying if we're really that worried about it, it's like, yeah, that's what you would do. You would,
or you just build an email server and let all the mail get directed through it.
Yes, and then you just take a cloth and wipe it down.
I mean, the Bidens aren't clean by any means.
Let me take some notes here. What?
All right. Well, speaking of
I'm sitting here thinking the most
and you go,
obvious possible things. I don't understand
you wipe it
politics.
down.
all right, speaking of leaks and everything else, and Fox News, who's been following the whole battle now, which is, I think, fascinating because it's new media, old media, and contract dispute with Tucker Carlson, who I think with his legal, his lawyer and that legal team, who, by the way, is the same team that got Megyn Kelly, her settlement, is working with Don Lemon, is working with all these people. So the guy's not a lightweight in terms of his background. What do you think about the creative bit of, I don't care about your money. Here you go. You can have my whole contract money back. You stop paying me today. And by the way, I'm going on Twitter. I'm not going on another network. I'm doing videos on Twitter. And every freaking reporter out there, all the journalists have a Twitter account. So Fox, by pushing at Tucker saying, "Oh, you can't release anything on Twitter," I don't know. How does that hold up? So I mean, that should be an interesting point of discussion. I'm going to go with Sean. He's the new guy.
Yeah. I saw Joe doing his
I don't know that.
He's voguing.
He's voguing.
No,
I
I
love
was
it.
doing four corners, but
yeah, no, I mean, it's really gonna come down to the four corners of their contract. But this idea that Tucker's now prohibited from going on Twitter, and he wasn't even getting paid for it. He's just freely talking. It sounds like he's doing it for free right now. The idea that he's going to be prohibited from that is going to be a big stretch because, yes, we were paying you. You can't go work for a competitor. Well, I'm not working. I'm just using it. I'm talking.
He's more popular than ever.
Yeah.
Non-compete clauses are routinely trashed.
Yes. And I think, especially in this situation, he's like, all Tucker says, look, I'm just doing it. I just like to talk. And he had 65 million views at one point, or it's over 100 million now.
88 million views.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, from day one, the first time he appeared on Twitter, I said it.
Yeah.
I think Aussie and I were talking about it at that point. It was very, very specific when Elon Musk says, "We don't have any written agreement to have him on here."
Yes.
Yeah, that was very specific
agreement,
language.
But Elon Musk could scare up $100 million from his couch cushions.
Yes.
Well, here's the other part. So could Tucker. Tucker. A lot of people don't know it, but Tucker he has two family fortunes. One of them is the Swanson family, like the foods, and another is like the largest rancher throughout California in the West. And Tucker is incredibly rich. He's got family money. The guy's never needed money. So what are you going to do? How can you sue Tucker Carlson, who has all of his own money in the world? You're suing over a contract. You already said, don't pay me. Piss off.
And I think, and I don't know how this happened, but when Fox showed up to his studio in Maine and they tore it apart, they said, "Oh, well, you're no longer working for us, so we're going to take this all back." I'm wondering how that all worked out, because ultimately, even if that was something they legally could do, in public opinion or even in court, that's not going to look very good when they did that and literally gutted his entire building like that. So,
well,
I think Tucker doing this
took a nosedive.
What's that?
I was just saying, Fox took a nosedive when they booted him from the network. I mean, it didn't look good for them. Nobody agreed with it. Nobody liked it. And it's very obvious that people want to continue to follow Tucker, see what he has to say wherever he goes. So I think he's established himself as, a dominant personality, a personality that people want to hear from. He'll be successful no matter what.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's like the other thing that I saw was a bunch of other news outlets rubbishing him for having what they've classed as a low budget show and that sort of thing. And I'm just like, people are going to be following him irrespective, no matter what the trappings are, no matter what the window dressing is. He's there to provide information and journalism. No one's really going to give a shit if it looks,
Well, they say that about Joe Rogan, and he blows them all away. I mean, Tucker got more views than MSNBC will get for an entire month in one view.
And what it boils down to, low budget means less overhead, which means more money for me.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're always going to do that. And I think that they killed themselves, and they're killing the rest of the old media the whole way, because Tucker Carlson was the only reason a lot of people were watching Fox.
True.
There's over 1 million gone. That audience is completely gone. Fox has been like number 2 now behind MSNBC, I think, in all the time slots. They've lost the evening completely. And a lot of people were only watching Fox for Tucker. As soon as that went, now they've discovered alternative media. And it's like, oh, well, why bother? I'll just watch over, all the people over here. And I'm, thank you, Tucker, because maybe some of them are right here watching that might have been watching Fox because they had not discovered it yet. Fox had an older audience, a lot of the older audience, they liked them. They're now trying new technology that they weren't using before.
Well, we've seen the disintegration of mainstream media significantly over the last year. And I mean, I don't know about people who didn't follow the trial, but everybody who followed the Depp v. Heard trial, and they saw the way that was covered and the way Amber Heard was represented in the media. And I think that really killed mainstream media for a lot of people. It showed who you could trust, who you couldn't trust. You're seeing Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair. You're seeing, all of these different networks. And then with news media, I think that what they did with Tucker Carlson, that was kind of like the final, like death knell, basically, of mainstream media. It's like people are now recognizing and realizing that mainstream media is not the place to go.
Yeah. And somebody's saying that Rogan is not funny. He's a better podcaster. I don't know. Like, his stand-up's fine, I guess. But yes, Rogan is a fantastic.
Funny or not, he's loaded.
No, he's a fantastic podcaster. He's one of the. I strive to be half as good at Joe Rogan in interviewing. The guy sits there for 3 hours and gets into the core of other people. He's infinitely curious. He's a brilliant interviewer. Sorry, whatever. If he's not a good stand-up, whatever, I don't care. He is a fantastic host.
And he does it.
I wouldn't watch Tucker on Fox because I won't watch cable media, but I did watch him on Twitter. So that's one of the 5 million there.
Yeah.
He's the mother Tucker.
Oh.
Yeah, I only really watched Fox this morning because I wanted to find some non-leftist talking points about Trump. That was pretty much the only reason that I was looking for that, because it's all like CNN's coverage, and God, CNN is just. I used to love CNN. I mean, I'm a former leftist as well. Like, I used to follow CNN. I used to think that, like, Anderson Cooper was the best, and everything they said was, like gospel, and it's definitely taken a turn.
And now you're saying yippee-ki-yay, Carlson Tucker.
I want to hear what he has to say. I think he's done some incredible interviews. I think that he's an amazing personality. I haven't really enjoyed all of his stuff. I definitely have disagreed with some of his talking points, but I think that he's an incredible figure. I think he'll be successful wherever he goes because he's sharp. He's witty, and he's controversial, and he knows it, and he rides with that. Like, he uses his controversy for good.
He's independent.
My problem is I'm old, so in my brain I still see him as his early 20s, wearing an ill-fitting suit and a bow tie, like begging Rush Limbaugh to mention his name on air. So I still kind of have these problems taking him seriously. It's 30 years ago in my brain. You
remember Jon Stewart when he burned him, right? When they had that showdown. But you know what? Even Tucker laughs about that now. It's funny. How many of you guys ever watched Jimmy Dore? No? Okay. Jimmy Dore is a leftist, but a populist. Okay. So he's very much anti-corporate media, anti-everything else. And he was going on and on about Tucker's Twitter releases saying nobody is telling the truth in mainstream media at all. You will never, ever, ever see this. And he was shocked that it was Tucker Carlson who was speaking the truth versus Jon Stewart. He thought a Jon Stewart would, or Bill Maher would, or somebody like that who's known to be contentious. It's like, no, it's Tucker Carlson, and he's going against everybody and completely independent. And I think that's why, keep in mind, half of his audience, he was the number one host among Democrats too.
Yeah, I'll tell you this much. When I was the clips I've seen of him, I actually agree with him more frequently than I would of Mitch McConnell, which is astonishing.
That's an easy pick.
Okay, what I'm saying is, you tend to think Republican right and stuff like that. And what I'm saying is, I know, like, there's a lot of things that I'll agree with him far more than Lindsey Graham or any of these neocons. But because he recognizes the uniparty, he recognizes all these different, how it's not race versus race, but this is designed to keep the haves versus the have-nots and keep the have-nots fighting as much as possible. He sees through all that bunk, and I give him respect for that. So.
And he admits his own issues too. Like, he's come out lately and talked about how he was a major cheerleader for Iraq, and he's eternally ashamed of that. And you don't see that often. You don't see people saying, okay, I did blah, 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 and I was completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see Biden doing that, really. I mean, considering that some of the positions that Biden has taken throughout his career.
Bill?
You don't see any politicians doing that.
Well, again, I was one of the guys who was ready to vote for Biden in 1988 because I thought he was going to save the world, until it turned out he was plagiarizing all of his speeches.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even understand the shame in the whole Iraq thing, because if you were alive then and you were American, you were in favor of the war.
Well, of course,
it's like every one of us was in favor of the war, and now we look back at it and we're like, "What the hell?"
Well, it's because
people died
trusting intelligence agencies.
We had 12 people die during.
No. I'm talking about the civilians and the people in Iraq.
Yeah.
It's like we're cheering something on, then we find out that it's based on a lie, and we're like, "Oh, we are cheering people dying." Those who have a conscience kind of feel a little bit ashamed.
Well, I mean, the first Gulf War. The first Gulf War went so well that we literally had to stop fighting because people were like, "Okay, we're winning this too hard."
Mm-hmm. It was a mercy rule.
We're doing.
We stopped because we didn't want to stay. If we went all the way, we're like, "Well, what are we going to do?"
Yeah.
And instead of looking that same way going forward, 10 years later, we said, "Screw it, we'll make it work." We realized, hey, deposing Saddam's probably not a good idea. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, you created the power vacuum that we had.
We just protected the precious oil, and then we went back.
Well, and don't worry. Then the next administration said, "Hold my beer. Let's go ahead and finish it off. We'll destabilize Syria, and we'll destabilize Libya too. Let's get them all shaken apart. It'll be fun." So I don't know.
No, Nova. That was in 1988. That's back when I was a young
92
first year college liberal. Everybody's a liberal in college. Come on.
Thank you for making me feel better, Jeff.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Biden plagiarized everything. I guess I better do the next best guy, Gary Hart. What could possibly go wrong with Gary Hart? Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, Dukakis. Oh God, never mind. Bush won the election. The whole world's going to hell. And then I grew up.
Well, what is it? Churchill said that if you're young and not a liberal, you have no heart, and if you're old and not conservative, you have no brain.
No, I mean, Eric, seriously, I see this all the time. You get these hardcore left-wing liberals that have never been outside of the United States. They come to Korea, they take the English teaching jobs in Korea as a lark or as part of their gap year or things like that. They come to Korea and they see how the rest of the world really works. And a lot of them change their stripes. They goes, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was in America.
Wait, Jeff, are you talking about the good Korea or the bad Korea?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was going to say, go up north, and yes, I wholeheartedly agree.
Because if you cross the DMZ, then you'll know how the world really works.
That's like a running joke. It's like back in the day when I had to get some parts for my Harley and I had to order some parts from Georgia, and the lady was like, "Is that the good Korea or the bad Korea?" It's like, yeah, I'm sure there's Americans riding Harley Davidson through the streets of Pyongyang, North Korea. It's the good Korea. But no, it's like you're young and you're virile, vigorous, and potent, as G. Gordon Liddy said. So I mean, you want to be something. You want to fight. You want to have the liberal side of you. But then sort of reality bites you, and you realize how the rest of the world works.
Yeah, you pay
and
taxes.
The fact that you have the ability to say the things you say in America. People would literally give their lives to be able to protest the first world BS that we protest in the States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mean they're not worried about trans rights?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I went through that too.
The Little Mermaid is is like the worst performing country in the world is apparently South Korea for like this new Little Mermaid thing, because like this just isn't why are you doing this? We got big, why, and it moves on. Yeah.
So this is a good super chat. Speaking of old punk rockers, John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten, is about as MAGA as you can get.
I love John Lydon. And I love the Sex Pistols.
Well, I think it's funny because it says everything that punk rock is now right wing, or it is. Yeah. It is, it is right wing to be punk because the left has got the establishment completely locked down, and counterculture is countering what is essentially happening, with the control of the left.
Well, it was like two examples. There's one thing I was talking about with Stephen Gosney on my stream a couple of weeks ago. Right now, JFK's inaugural speech, ask not what you can do for your country, but ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do. That is MAGA right wing. That's alt-right shit now, stuff now. That's alt-right stuff now, to ask, what you can do for your country, not what they can do for you. And, that's where it is. Yeah.
All right, so this super chat trying to bust on Jeff.
Yes.
Let's go, Brandon.
There are some of us who are similar vintage, and liberals back then were not like they are now. There were a lot of open-minded people who would talk with the power of their ideas, respect your position on the other side of it. And I know when I was in college, I didn't come as a liberal, but I respected a lot of people who I met who proclaimed themselves that, including professors who gave me a lot of respect, even though I was coming right out of the military. Things are different now than they were then, in my opinion.
Well, it's funny. You could agree to disagree. It's heterodox. Go ahead, Chandler.
I was just going to say, it's funny that that people are talking about punk rock, because I mean, I grew up on punk music and I really love punk. And when I was a teenager, I was really into it. And I think it's really funny because my my anarchist tendencies have kind of come out because I realize that being raised in California as a liberal, you want to rage against what's popular. And I think that becoming a conservative has been my way of rebelling against my environment, because I am an anarchist and a punk at heart.
Unless you rage against the machine, then you're the ultimate corporate sellout act in America.
Yeah. Anyway,
rage against the register is more like it. But yeah. No, I totally agree. And that is the case. Punk is a counterculture thing. And back in the day.
We had the late, great P.G. O'Rourke. We've got Dave Barry, the late great Dave Barry. They were all these political satirists. Dave Barry wrote a great book called Dave Barry Does Japan, which if you just take the word Japan and replace it with Korea, it's the same thing. He's talking about going to a park and seeing like 5,000 people all dressed in leather and having like these Elvis, these ducktail hairdos and things. He talks about it being 5,000 people being different in exactly the same way. and like the ultimate counterculture we see in the life of Monty Python's Life of Brian, where it's like everybody's chanting, "We're different, we're not the same, we're all different." And then you got the one guy going, "I'm not." That's the ultimate counter character guy, the one guy that's saying I'm not different than the entire crowd that's screaming I'm different. That's that's like the counter. It doesn't matter which side of the political fence you're on. The counterculture is literally that. Whatever the culture is, they're just counter to it because they're young, they're free, the hormones are raging, and you're experiencing life, which I think is the way it should be. You should think critically about everything. But when you become an adult, you get the job, you experience other cultures, reality bites you in the keister, and you sort of learn how the world really works.
Another name you didn't mention though is Christopher Hitchens. Rest in peace. That guy was perfect example, quote unquote lefty, liberal, whatever you want, but a super hardcore intellectual. So he would argue all day because he was a big atheist against all these bishops and whatever. And then they would go have dinner together and, super close. He was probably godfather to half of their kids. I mean, there was a time, or even here in the States, remember Tip O'Neill, Jeff?
Oh yeah.
All politics is local. Well, that was the day that everybody would yell at each other on the floor in Congress, but then they would all go drinking together. Democrats and Republicans. Ted Kennedy, shared many a drink with the John McCains and other, whatever.
Ted Kennedy and Orrin Hatch were the best of friends.
Yeah. Or you know when it probably died is when Scalia passed, because Scalia and RBG
Ginsburg,
or whatever.
yeah, they were best friends.
Absolute best friends, and they were just mortally on the opposite end politically and philosophically.
I was going to mention.
I don't know. Again, just like from the two olds on the panel, I don't know if Steve would agree with me, but I think it would go even back to when Robert Bork was the Supreme Court justice nomination. I think that's sort of when you started drawing the lines, and you
went into Thomas.
You couldn't be friends with someone who disagreed with you. I mean, when you've been borked, when borked became a verb, I think it was just like to that point where you can't agree with someone, but then like be friends with them. I think that was kind of the point. I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
Well, yeah, that one does stand out in my mind, and as just an absolutely unfair smearing of the guy. Absolutely.
Well, I followed up by Clarence Thomas.
How awful.
How did that one go?
Awful.
And he's still smeared to this day. I mean, keep in mind, when they opened the African American, museum in DC, he was excluded. There was no display for him. I think he's in there now, but he was out. So they open it. So you've got, a black Supreme Court justice. Can you get any higher of an honor? But he's left out. So go figure. So there is some definite hypocrisy that there are people who, well, I guess they're no longer of a race. Or, it can also be like you're no longer a woman if you don't think a certain way.
I think leftist ideology has permeated everything. And, this whole like political correctness bit has just, it's destroyed decency in America. And it's really sad to see.
Somebody say, I never watched pro wrestling, but they're saying when pro wrestling abandoned kayfabe, Washington took it and ran.
Fair enough.
That's not bad. Fair enough. Okay, so I don't know how we got straight off. We were talking about Tucker Carlson. So what is the next case coming up? Who is anybody covering Koberger? Is there stuff going on there? I heard there's a lot of filings.
Starting Monday is a very, very interesting case that I'm trying to talk Aussie into doing with me, like joint streaming. It's a young rapper named YNW Melly. He has the misfortune of being charged under the new Florida death penalty statute. It's one. I mean, who better to watch and comment on a young black urban rapper than a 53-year-old white lawyer dude living in Korea than me? But he's been charged with murdering 2 other rappers, and they're seeking the death penalty, and it's been. They've been given the green light to seek the death penalty under the new Florida statute, which only requires 8 out of 10 of the jurors to recommend
8 out of 12, right? 8 out of 12.
Yeah, 2/3. 2/3 of the jury is all it takes for your government, for the power, for the people that have control over your life to kill you. He's one of, if not the first case to be tried under the new death penalty statute.
Wait, is this Florida?
That's Florida.
Yes. It's going to be
It's all because of Nicholas Cruz.
Can I invoke Gosney for a moment? Because this is the subject of Steve Gosney's book, his latest book, which he
wrote a book?
Gosney's not here. I'll fill in. Look at that.
I swear, Chandler, if you're about to promote his death penalty book, I swear to God.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna talk about the issues. I'm not gonna talk about his book. I'm just gonna say that I read it and I enjoyed it. I edited it, and one of the things that he brought up was that essentially you have this 8-12 thing. So, DeSantis wants that. He's put this new thing into law. And the whole problem with it is that there is reasonable doubt if 4 jurors do not agree. And I have and I think that Steve has a huge problem with that. I have a huge problem with that. I think that there should be a totality. I think the entire jury should agree to death.
If you need 12 to convict, common sense to me would be like, if you need 12 to convict, you need 12 to kill. Maybe I'm slow, but it just makes a certain moral sense to me in my mind.
I will give the state one person who somehow fudged their way through the voir dire process, and you could, just like the one guy who has a moral holdout, but 2/3 is a very, very low standard.
I agree.
I'm worried if we're going to see more people getting off, basically, because people are going to be concerned that it's only a 2/3. To be honest, I'm wondering if that's going to weigh
more
in.
people.
Yeah.
Well, they also have the new law where somebody may not have committed murder and they can get the death penalty. So, is there a case coming up on that one?
Yeah, it's like the essay of children and things are now under that.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Which, I mean, I'd take them out and put a bullet in their damn head out the back.
Traditionally, those types of crimes used to get you that. So,
well, so did cattle rustling.
Yes.
I mean, what was it? Scalia, I guess, wrote about all this. Most crimes were punishable by death back in the day.
Yeah, because there weren't too many crimes to start with. But speaking of wanting the death penalty, there's a video clip of Joe Biden back in the 90s where he's like, I'm the first guy to make like everything death penalty eligible. And he was like so proud of that. He was like listing off all the things you could do. It was like spit on the sidewalk of the Capitol building. Bam.
He did write the crime bill.
Yeah. He tried to make so many things.
Well, this 8 out of 12 thing coming on the back, as Sean said, of the Nicholas Cruz case, is an example on the other side, the more conservative, hard on crime side, taking a bad case, a bad result, and then making a bad law out of it. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, reactionary laws are the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Cruz, I think there were only 3 jurors who wanted the death penalty.
That's why it's 8-4. It was literally 9 of the 12 said no, said, do we want death? And 3 said we want death. And that didn't work. So DeSantis said, wait a minute. 3 said yes. Okay, 4. We only need 4 of you to. And then it became 8 out of 12 just because 9 didn't work.
And so now there'll be another cruise down the road, right? And they'll only get 7. They'll say, well, you know what? We just need a majority. Let's just have a simple majority.
This is the government who literally has the power to kill you.
Exactly. That's put in the hands of the state. And I mean, I'm a libertarian. I don't believe in that. I think it's absolute power corrupts, absolutely. But, the problem is that it's not going to deter anything. There's no, I mean, I don't see any evidence. I've read about this. I've studied this, obviously. With general deterrence and specific deterrence, the death penalty does not deter. Somebody is going to come along and do what Nicholas Cruz did again in Florida. And if that person's put to death, it's not going to prevent another person from coming along and doing that again.
Well,
no, you're right. I don't see much of an argument for general deterrence, but I think specific deterrence, if you end somebody's life, it's going to specifically deter them from doing it again.
That's true. That is true. There is specific deterrence. I think I misspoke when I said there wasn't. There is specific deterrence, just not general deterrence.
Well, this is the fun thing. This is pre-law school Chandler. I can't wait to see 3 years from now, Chandler.
Once she's jaded and it's the shine's worn off a little bit.
Gosh dang final exam. I'm done with this. The cold, hardcore, jaded, crusty old Chandler.
You think I'm going to get jaded and crusty, Jeff?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to get crusty. I might get a little jaded.
Your heart will darken.
Possibly.
Your cynicism will rise.
So
Possibly.
take the Koberger case. Isn't it true that Washington doesn't have the death penalty? Idaho does have it. So he comes across the border and commits the murders if he's the guy who did it in a death penalty jurisdiction when there were similar looking students right across so it's a good argument that deterrence doesn't control whether somebody's going to murder somebody. I mean, I'm in favor of killing murderers, but I'm also in favor of what Jeff said, which is restraint on the power of the state and due process and not watering it down.
By the way, on that same note, Ted Bundy, remember, he was being convicted in Utah, which didn't have, or Colorado, one of the two, did not have the death penalty. He jumped out a freaking window to go to Florida where he could be fried. So, it's really hard to control for maniacs.
And I've talked about this before on my stream. I have a deep connection to Ted Bundy. My first day of law school in my property class, my property professor was talking. He was going through, and this guy was like a steel trap. His mind was like a steel trap. He was 80 years old anyway. He started teaching law in 1939. Wow. That's how old this guy was. And he's going through the role. And he's like, oh, so-and-so. Was your father so-and-so? Yeah. Oh, I taught your father. Oh, was so-and-so your father? Oh, yeah, I taught your father too. Oh, was so-and-so your father? No. Really? Oh, no, he was my grandfather. He taught one of my classmates' grandfather's law. Whoa. And then he gets to me and he's like, Mr. Harrison, you've won the lottery. I'm like, oh, yeah, really? He goes, you are sitting in Ted Bundy's chair.
Oh God.
So in my property class, I sat in Ted Bundy's seat in my property class at University of Utah Law.
Nice.
Ted Bundy was a sharp dude.
Yeah.
He campaigned for the governor of Washington, if I recall. And afterward, it was the weirdest thing in the world. But the judge complimented him for how he handled his case. And, it was like before he sentenced him, he goes, "Yeah, I'm really sorry to do this. You're a wonderful, well-spoken, great young man, blah, 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 blah. And I sentence you to die."
He said, "You took the wrong path. You could have gone a different way, but you chose to go this way. And unfortunately, this is where you end up." And I still do not understand that judge and his rationale. It was the most bizarre sentencing hearing I've ever seen.
Oh, and Mad Scientist said, "Friend of my aunt almost got picked up in a park by Ted.
The point is,
we all
Chandler,
close to Washington." Ted Bundy actually did kill one of my best friend's girlfriend at the time's mother.
Oh, God.
Jesus.
Jesus. Jeff, I saw Brandon in the chat was just like, "Oh God, not this story." Apparently you've told this story.
Yeah, no, I've told it a few times because it's cool. I sat in Ted Bundy's chair in law school. I'm telling this story every chance I get.
John, jump in. Just jump in, John. Just control. Seize it.
So Chandler, the reason why the judge credited him, I mean, he was a pro se guy who did a phenomenal job in a capital murder trial. I mean, I do think, given how
he fled to Florida where there's the death penalty, so he's not that smart.
Well, hey, you got to go kill your co-eds where you find them. I mean, they were in season down there at the Cayo house. But no, he did such a good job. I don't blame the judge for saying had you I can only imagine the good you would have done as an attorney because he probably would have been a very effective attorney.
Separating
he had
from
that
the
ability.
necrophilia, all of the crimes and the many other women who probably
we're not all perfect.
Well, Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski is one of the most brilliant people on the face of the earth. That's another example. I've interviewed John Fitzgerald, who was the guy that broke down his letter and whatnot. And John Fitzgerald said something I'll never forget. He goes, "The guy has the most brilliant ideas you can ever imagine, most cogent, etc., except he likes to bomb people."
Everyone has their shortcomings. You're not flawed. You're not flawed. Everyone's got their flaws.
Well, I mean, while we're talking about books, I mean, just Industrial Society in its future. This is a very good read. I highly recommend it.
Ted Kaczynski, yes. The whole environmental terrorism is based on him.
Yes,
he's the one who taught people how to put spikes in trees. Oh yeah. Ted Kaczynski got a lot there. Also, you know why he was caught, right?
His brother.
Well, no. What caught him though and tied him definitively is perfection.
Are you seeing a pattern? Ted Bundy, University of Utah. Ted Kaczynski left a mail bomb package in the University of Utah.
They're not named Ted.
There's like a thing.
Stay away from guys named
Utah.
Ted.
Utah is a wide open Western space. We collect the weirdos.
Yes.
Well,
or maybe it's just Mormons drive people nuts.
Season 4 of Fargo. What was it? The actor who played in Justified was in season 4 of Fargo. If anybody's got a chance to check that out, and he plays a Mormon government marshal or U.S. marshal who is very quirky.
Actually, a huge number of the U.S. Marshals and the FBI are recruited from Mormons because they have international experience. They have multi-language capabilities. There's, the morality that exists.
I've heard that they don't drink, they don't swear. They have a clean record and a clean history. Because when you're hired for the FBI, they'll interview your babysitters, like everybody who ever knew you.
Yeah, they already own the tie.
Yeah, so Mormons are perfect for that.
Given the amount of people they have in charge of things, I'm not sure they did very good interviews. So I mean, I'm sure I could go. Why should we hire you, Sean, for the FBI? Because I won't fabricate evidence. Next.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, let me tell the
story.
Do you think that's a hiring plus for him?
I don't think they're gonna like that.
Let me tell a story real quickly because the chat is asking about it. What caught him was in his manifesto, he wrote, instead of you can't have your cake and eat it too, he wrote you can't eat your cake and have it too. Right. And he had written that in another letter to an editor. The reason why I'm saying it was perfection that got him is the truth is the original saying is you can't eat your cake and have it too. It's an old saying that got twisted over time, and the majority of the world gets it wrong. it was odd. He got it right. His punctuation was perfect. His spelling was perfect. His phrasing was perfect. His grammar was perfect. Everything about the manifesto was perfect. And that's sort of why it was completely wild.
It also, Eric, the end of that quote was a key to law enforcement because it said, you can't eat your cake and have it too because there's a bomb in it.
Oh, well,
that tipped them off.
It took a few tries for people to read it because they kept going off, Steve. So nobody could report back.
Well, the way that he's
Uncle Ted got actually. That's sad.
People say you can't have your cake and eat it too. Really? It's always been you can't eat your cake and have it too.
Well, that was the thing. So there were linguistic specialists. There were linguistic specialists who broke down his manifesto, and they figured out. It was John Fitzgerald, and they figured out that the way that he structured the manifesto was actually very similar to the way that one would write a thesis, how it was taught and structured at the time that he was attending, I believe, Harvard for his PhD.
Yeah, he was part MK Ultra.
And so they were able to break that down and realize that it came from, figure out what his educational background was. And then the saying, the phrasing, it changed at a certain point. And so that was kind of the key.
It doesn't make any sense the way you guys are saying it. I've always said it. You
can't have your cake and eat it too.
You can't eat cake without having it. That doesn't make any sense.
No, see, that's what you. No,
you
can't.
Joe. The point is that you can't eat the cake and then have it. You already ate it.
Yeah.
That's the phrase.
You can't retain something as well as consume it. You can't do both. And Marie Antoinette said that, and it was actually brioche. You can't have your brioche and eat it too.
No, it was let them have cake.
Yeah, never mind. That was a different person. You're right.
You're right. Marie Antoinette.
I'm like bringing Marie Antoinette into it.
It was, the poor people. The poor people are starving.
That was the French Revolution. I was totally wrong.
The poor people are starving. They don't have any bread, and her response was, "Oh, let them eat brioche," because she was so unaware.
15
never
minutes about.
Oh no.
Yeah. So what
this
case
was too fast.
cover in 15 minutes? What's next? You got Koberger. We didn't talk about Koberger. We talked about every other maniac. So what's going on with Koberger?
Not much, really.
Oh, okay. Well, that was fun.
Well, we just finished the Travis Rudolph trial, who was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder for confronting some people that rolled up on his doorstep after midnight and wanted to talk about things with him. He was just acquitted, which was an amazing trial that I covered. That was actually fantastic.
And he shot into the car, right? And that was why they charged. Yeah,
39 rounds.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
that's reasonable.
He was acquitted.
That's only less than 10 per person, though, because there were 4 people in the car. So,
and he had a 100-round drum on his weapon. So he 61 more shots could have lit up the night.
Were they armed themselves?
Well, it depends who you ask. One of them admitted to having a gun. But that was only after a search dog found it. And then he came up with this elaborate story of how he brought his gun because he wanted to feel like a man. But then while they were fighting on the front lawn, he forgot he had it. While he was being shot at, he forgot he had it. But then he heard the sirens and he got Swiss cheesed. He took 3 rounds. And he ran off into the bushes.
Well,
and he heard
there
the
you go.
ambulance
He could run after 3 rounds. Have you seen the footage of the guy coming up on the cop with like this pole? It's super scary. The guy looks like a zombie. He's just laughing. He's like, ah, and the cop sitting there, the cop emptied, every round, perfect center mass, just emptied him and kept coming and coming and coming. And the guy emptied the gun. And it was like probably 12 rounds into him before he finally fell over dead. So how many rounds is a legitimate amount? They teach
until the force until there is no longer a threat.
Yeah,
and he claimed self-defense, and the state failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was not self-defense.
I think a lot of it came down to the defendants. To the witnesses.
The witnesses were garbage from square one, and like absolute garbage witnesses. And the police detective, the chief investigator. She was the absolute worst human being I think I may have ever seen in my entire life.
Absolutely.
It was
absolutely.
I believe it was her 4th investigation she'd ever done in her entire life.
What did she say about evidence, Jeff? Tell them what she said about evidence.
oh God,
Optional?
no,
She said if they,
no, it was very near optional. I'm trying to think of the exact quote. She said, "Okay, I can have her on Twitter."
I could
This
do
was
it.
literally, she said this probably 10 different times, either this exact way or very, very similar wording under cross-examination. When they were asking, well, why didn't you check this out? Why didn't you look around this fence? Why didn't you check for other ammunition? Why didn't you check for other shell casings? Why didn't you check for other guns along the escape route the vehicle took, or in the parking lot where the vehicle was parked? She said, and this is a quote from her first time she said it, and there was various permutations of it after. If there's no information that evidence exists, I don't look for it. It's a waste of taxpayer money. It's a waste of taxpayer money for me to look for evidence that I have no information exists. I can only look for evidence that I have information may exist.
Joe's going to have a heart
People
attack
have been
right now.
convicted because of this person.
And she said that probably 10 times.
Very
And then on
proudly. Very,
day
with no
5.
sense of irony whatsoever.
Day 5 of this 10-day trial, after the jury had been excused, the judge was pissed off because the trial was supposed to be over by that point and a new trial was supposed to have started. And he's like, look, what can we do to speed this up? What can we concede to? What can we stipulate to? What can we do to move this forward? And the prosecutor, she literally said, what has already come out is that this was not a thorough investigation. The prosecution said that. The prosecutor, on the record, outside the presence of the jury, said that this case was not a thorough investigation. Yet they continued with the trial.
Yeah, she talked to the state's witnesses
That's
for
how prosecutors work.
between 10 and 17 minutes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, her entire investigation of the witnesses was 17 minutes.
Yes.
In total.
A shooting with 40 rounds. Yes.
I liked
it's
her.
Astounding.
I liked her opening statement when she went through, and when she got to the very end of it, she started yelling at the jury. Like that's super convincing if you scream your last sentence.
And her
she was really
closing
pounding
was
the
the
table.
same way.
Oh, the
Pounding
closing,
the
she
table.
just pounded the table.
Mhm.
Impact. You had no impact whatsoever, sweetheart. It was a horrible closing
Hey
argument.
guys, I know Eric just stepped out, but I have to get going. I have another. Again,
No,
I
you
gotta
can't
get to.
leave while he's gone.
Ooh,
You have to wait for him to come
Mr.
back.
Busy Guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, Joe, no, I liked last night. That was a great show, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very,
So,
very much.
yeah.
I
And
appreciate
I
that.
love how you learned about Arkansas. I'm glad you learned about
Oh,
that.
yeah. I've had a fun week watching movies, but
It's cute watching Joe get red pilled like that.
Oh, when I was watching for the
It
40,
is heartwarming.
I couldn't believe that before 1998, there's literally 48 dead people. Before
Mhm.
1998, before Seth Rich or anything else, literally
Mhm.
48 people who were suicided or car accident or airplane crash. I mean, just one muggings. It's just crazy. It is crazy how no one is able to go after these people who are clearly. I shouldn't even talk about it. My dad got so mad at me. He's like, why? He actually sent me a text, which was, why
He's like, now you're on the list, Joseph.
Yeah, he sent me a text last night. He's like, why are you flirting with the Clintons? And
That's you, Joe, flirting with the Clintons.
and I actually said, like, flirting? But he's like, yeah. He's like, I don't want you doing this. I worry about you. And I'm like, oh, that's sweet, Dad.
Well, that's why I thought it was important to specify
just
that
wanted
you weren't feeling self-deleting or you checked your brakes were
I'm-
fine and
yeah,
all that
my-
sort of stuff.
Yes.
So.
But anyways, Eric, I do gotta go. So thanks for having me on, Eric.
Hey,
Later.
Sean.
See you later,
Thanks for
Sean.
joining me.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, we wait with beta breasts and they go, oh wait, it's not Nate. It's not an admin. Because they can only leave the stream, not kill the stream.
Yeah. Well, that's a positive and a negative.
Oh, thanks a lot there, Jeff. No, that was a hell of a surprise. Was that last week? Yeah, that was, I think. Or no,
Week before.
week
Because
before.
It was
that
week
was the
before,
week
yeah.
I was on. Yeah.
That's right. I'm sitting there.
You
like,
guys following the whole Biden situation with that FD 1023 with that informant?
I keep seeing headlines, but all I've seen is like right-wing headlines flashing by. So automatically go for something. It's like I kind of want to see.
Is this the 2 million or
if
this
it-
something
No,
different?
it's five.
Something
It's
different.
five. No,
5 million.
basically.
Oh, it's 5 million. Oh, my
Yeah,
bad.
and Jamie Raskin. So what happened was the oversight committee said, "Hey, we've heard about this FD 1023, which is basically a statement written by a confidential human source, and which someone who's been paid by the FBI is considered a very trusted source by the FBI. They've been using him all the way back to the days of Obama, and this person basically created a statement that the oversight committee subpoenaed from the FBI. And Chris and Director Ray said, "We're not giving it to you. We're afraid that his life will be in danger if there's information about him. Then we won't even show you with his name redacted because we're terrified that we can't protect him," which is, to me, a little bit of an indictment about the FBI. You would think that they should be able to protect a source. But essentially, this source says that he spoke with the person who bribed the Bidens and gave $5 million to one Biden and $5 million to another. And it's basically that $5 million to Hunter. Essentially, it sounds like they were saying $5 million to Hunter and $5 million to Joe. So this source,
$5 million to the big guy.
That gave $5 million because, and this was basically that Hunt, and that the statement essentially there was a whole fight between Ray and the House and the Oversight Committee about whether or not they're going to hold him in contempt for refusing to turn this document over. But the astonishing thing about this is, Jamie Raskin is trying to portray this as Raskin was claiming that the investigation had been closed back in 2020, which was a flat out lie that he told in his press briefing. But apparently, this guy spoke to the person who literally handed the money to the Bidens. Literally is the one who turned it over and admitted that he bribed the Bidens. What are they bribing them for? That whole story that Trump got his first impeachment from. That basically where many of us have seen the clip of Biden bragging about how he got Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor from the Ukraine, fired by threatening to withhold $1 billion of American aid. That what happened was that Burisma, so a lot of people on the left is like, what would be the reason for Burisma looking to have Viktor Shokin to be removed? If you're unfamiliar with this, so basically Burisma is the company that Hunter Biden that took Hunter Biden onto his board, even though he doesn't speak Ukrainian, doesn't know anything about they're an energy company. He knows nothing about the energy industry, and they were paying him something like $80,000 a month. But in addition to that, they gave $5 million each, supposedly, according to this informant, who again is a very trusted informant. And he says that what Burisma was looking to purchase, I think, another oil company, and they had to borrow money from a bank. This is what this part is not. This, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, she did not say this part of it, but I've heard this. I saw this somewhere else. That then the problem that Burisma had is that there was a dormant criminal investigation into them, and Victor that had been started years earlier. So when that investigation started, so basically, the left is saying, why would Burisma want to get rid of Shokin, who was the one who was doing this investigation into Burisma, when the whole thing had been dormant for years? And the answer to that question is that Burisma needed the investigation formally closed so that they could get a loan from a bank in order to purchase this company. And Shokin wasn't closing it. So allegedly, that was their motivation for getting rid of Shokin, so they can get a new guy in there who would formally close the case. And indeed, that's what happened 3 months after Shokin was removed. The case was formally closed. So this informant says that he spoke to the guy who paid the Bidens. Now, I mean, that's astonishing. It is an astonishing claim, which, what's going to happen politically? I don't think at the end of the day, even if he ends up being impeached by the House, I think there's zero chance that he's going to be impeached that he's going to be removed by the Senate, because you need to get 2/3 there. So it's like 66 people. And the left is also, what am I missing? The informant came to Congress and said it existed. The FBI first denied it existed because they're all Democrats. Yeah, they all denied it existed. This is the exact same they all, there was so much cover up, and Director Ray seems so shady in the way he's handling this, where he's refusing to hand things over. And they also admit that there's a mole in the FBI who is leaking information about the investigation to Hunter Biden. Like, what a complete Swiss cheese.
Oh, get back to it, but I forgot. Speaking of moles in the FBI, the biggest one just died.
Yes.
Hansen just died this past week.
All right.
Not the Iron Sheik?
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, so he can go to hell and hang out there for a while. But
I've been doing this too long. I was waiting for you to end the stream while Joe was ranting there.
No.
I've been doing this too long. I kept
happen.
waiting.
I got to let him plug a channel first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I brought this up where we're running out of time, but
no, it's the informant in the U.S. or Ukraine. Somebody's asking.
Oh, the informant. I'm not sure. All I know is that the FBI says that this is and even the left is admitting that this informant is someone who is very well trusted. Now the left's trying to spin it as like, well, it's hearsay because he heard it from someone. He heard it from the guy who did it, unless the informant himself was watching and part of it, was working undercover. All the information he's getting is being told by him, but it was told to him not by someone who says they saw it, by the guy who says, I'm the one who bribed them. I handed them the money. I mean, how much closer of a source can we possibly get? It's astonishing. It is astonishing that this is not everywhere. This is a much bigger deal than paperwork by Trump.
Actually, it is time. Folks,
I know.
Where can everybody find you? Everybody, I have an interview premiering that this is going to redirect to as soon as it closes. It started at 1:30 with Solomon Anderson about the Zachariah Anderson case. And if you don't mind, please hang out. Please go over. I don't want to cut everybody out, but I think the interview is really important. I'm hoping that I can get some more light on it. So as soon as I hit end, I'm going to do it now. Everybody, thank you so much. Please go over there and pretend I was just cutting off Joe like normal.